Ned Connors was a regular man. He had been in the Air Force for over 20 years and was contemplating retirement. The benefits were good for a retired colonel, and he was beginning to think that he had reached his peak. 2020 was a year for the record. The pandemic had played havoc with him and his crew. They were ordered to socially distance whenever possible. However, on a fighter jet there was no such thing as social distancing. He was now divorced from his wife, and although he saw his son Ned Jr. often, he missed seeing him every single day. This morning Ned and his crew were scheduled to fly through the Bermuda Triangle. As an Air Force colonel, Ned was aware that there were things in the world that could be considered strange, but he had gone through that very space hundreds of times before. Joe Livingstone was his radio man and second in command. He was a captain and very good as a co-pilot. They had ridden together for the past 2 years and had a good rapport. Everything was normal and clear on that bright sunny day as they had left the airport in Florida and headed towards North Carolina. Joe was going over things when, without warning, the alert button lit up. This could have meant anything mechanical, and quickly Ned and Joe started going through different checks. But within seconds the plane's engines shut down. The emergency restart was unsuccessful, and so the mayday was sent out immediately. Ned was now finding himself spiraling out of control and approaching the water at a terrifying speed. He fought to hold the nose up and slammed into the wheel as the plane bounced over the calm ocean. With a flip of a switch, Ned hit the life-saving button that would provide them with a lifeboat. It was inflatable but would float. The plane was sinking quickly. Joe looked around the cockpit of the plane that he had been in safely, he thought, and looked down to see that both of his legs were crushed and stuck underneath the radio. He thought to himself, how strange that I can't feel anything. Without warning, all of a sudden there was a large whirlpool. Ned and Joe found themselves, plane and all, going deeper and deeper into the ocean. As they watched in horror, they tried their best to stop the downward spiral, but it was of no use. They were headed down at an astonishing speed and could do nothing to change their fate. Just as all hope was almost lost, without warning the plane slowed and seemed to be guided by some unnatural force. Joe and Ned watched as they seemed to be approaching some bright lights. It was then that they realized that they were approaching what appeared to be a large dome. They watched in awe as the dome opened and brought their plane to safety inside. Both Ned and Joe knew that they were witnessing something that they had only imagined. This was a place in the Atlantic Ocean that was not known by them, and they were going to have a chance to learn what it was and why it was there. The ship landed so softly that the two men were barely aware of them stopping. They looked at each other and tried to look out of the cracked windshield to see what was surrounding them. The world into which they had just come was alive with activity. There were men surrounding the plane, and as they smiled at the two men, they managed to calm down. "My name is Hal and I am here to help you. I see that you are injured and you will be cared for right away." Ned looked at his friend Joe and realized for the first time how badly his friend and co-pilot was hurt. It appeared as though his right leg had been nearly severed at the knee and his left leg was badly crushed. He felt two strong arms lift him up. As he looked up to see who was lifting him, he saw a strange-looking woman. She was strong yet gentle and lifted him easily. Joe was watching everything as though he was watching a movie. When he saw the woman reach in and pick up Joe, he was surprised by what he saw. She was a woman who was about 5'6" and 130 pounds with blonde hair, but one odd thing, she had only one eye in the middle of her head. But he didn't have time to really study her, for with the movement of her hand everything metal that had surrounded him disappeared. Now, the metal did not move, it did not make a sound, it just vanished. With the strongest and gentlest of hands, Joe was lifted onto a stretcher and he and Joe headed towards a large building. Ned and Joe were taken into a room where they were met by 3 other women, all with one eye in the middle of their face. With the swiftness that comes with great professionalism, the people went to work. Each of them had a specific purpose. They each worked on one part of their bodies. With no instruments or anesthesia, they corrected everything in Joe's legs. Ned, who was not as injured as Ned, could feel the healing of his own body. It was strange, but he felt as though he had lost 10 years of aches and pains. When the workers were done, they bowed without speaking and left the room. Ned and Joe fell into a deep sleep. Ned wasn't sure how long he had slept, but when he woke up he saw that Joe too was stirring. "Joe, are you awake?" Ned asked. Joe opened his eyes and realized that what he thought was a dream was true. He looked over and saw Ned sitting up. He too sat himself up. It was strange, but he felt as though he was a new man and his legs felt completely unharmed. He cleared his throat and said, "Yes. I feel great." Linda had been outside watching the two men and was happy to see that both were awake. She stood up and walked into the room. "Good morning, my name is Linda." Ned and Joe both stood up and introduced themselves. Ned, being the colonel and highest in rank, felt that he was the one that should speak first, spoke up. "My name is Colonel Ned Connors and this is my captain and friend Joe Livingstone. We are members of the United States Air Force." He then reached over to shake her hand. Linda had been residing here in the city of L for over 200 years and had met many humans. Some were curious, some were arrogant, but most were intelligent, curious and steadfastly loyal. It was her job to make sure that they adjusted to the new life that they would be living in L. "I wanted to welcome you to my home. This city is named L. We are a city of many nations and planets and we hope that you will come to enjoy life here," Linda told the men as kindly as she could. Any human that entered the city would be there for life. She looked at them with compassion and said, "What happened to you was an accident and we had determined that neither one of you were going to survive unless we took immediate action. Because of our location we had to do some metallic changes to your body. Because of those changes you can no longer survive on the surface of Earth." Ned looked at Joe and listened to Joe as he spoke. "We both understand your kindness and we are both grateful that you saved our lives, but we need to go back to our families." "Just what did you mean by you made some metallic changes?" There was a note of urgency in his voice that was not normal for cool and calm Joe, Ned noticed. Linda gave them both the warmest smile that she could muster and said, "We are very deep here in the ocean. We are located much deeper than your weaker human body could withstand. The pressure would have resulted in your immediate death if we had not corrected you immediately. We do not have the ability to reverse the process. I am sorry. However, there are many people here that are from your own planet who are more than willing to help you make the adjustment. I am here to welcome you and make sure that your life is full and meaningful. Come and follow me, I will show you the city called L. This will be your home." As the two men left the room they were impressed by the beauty to which they were wailing into. The doors opened wide to a stone walkway. The stones gleamed under the light from which there seemed to be no end. It was as though they had walked outside into a sunlit field. There were tall columns that appeared to be made of marble on either side of the pathway with different figures of types of fish. There was an odor of flowers in the air that they had never smelled before, however it was very pleasant. As the three of them walked up a large stairway they were met by a young woman. "How do you do? My name is Eve," she said with a grand smile. "I will take you to your quarters." Eve looked much like Linda, having the two eyes, one in the front of the face and one in the back of the head. However, she was dressed in a green gown and Linda had been dressed in red. Ned also mentally noted that the women who had treated them had been dressed in green. It was then that he noted to himself that he had not met any men as of yet. He thought of it as a little odd. As they entered the building once again Ned saw the beauty. The walls were a rich mellow yellow color and their room was located just down the hall from the stairs. As Eve opened their door Ned and Joe looked at what was to become their new home. It was a good-sized room of about 20 by 12 with a private bath with a tub and shower. There were two beds each having their own dresser, a small closet and a television. There was a large window overlooking a courtyard. Although the room was bright and clean Ned felt like it was just too plain. It reminded him of his room in the barracks. Eve smiled and the two men were left to be alone in their room. This was the first time that either of them had had a chance to take a real look at their situation. They were alive and well, however, they were also virtual prisoners in a strange world under the sea. "Well, this is a dandy of situation that we have here. There must be a way out and I will find it," Ned said to Joe. We will have to speak to other people who have found themselves down here and see what they have to say. Their world is different and the abilities that they have. My legs were virtually broken in two yesterday and today they feel like they are brand new. I do not have one mark from the crash. Joe said. That was amazing. What Linda did with those two other women was hundreds of years ahead of our medical knowledge. I even feel as though I am 10 years younger. Ned said as he walked over to the closet. In the closet were 5 robes that were similar to the robes that the other women were wearing, however, their robes were white. He took one of them out and tried it on. It was made of a terry cloth-like substance and quite comfortable. He handed one to Joe and with that they both walked over to the mirror admiring they. Well, there's no time like the present to meet others. Ned said with a smile. The two men walked out of their room and started down the hallway. Joe was surprised to find no lock on the door, shrugged his shoulders and walked with his friend. Not far down they found a door that went out to the courtyard by their room. As they entered the courtyard they saw 2 men sitting at a table chatting. Ned and Joe walked over to the men and were offered a seat. Welcome my friends. Welcome to El, a place of peace, tranquility and love. My name El is Mark and this is my friend and unfortunate victim of a boating accident, Tom. Chapter 2. Ned sat down and a young man dressed in a brown robe brought them a drink. He too had one eye in the front of his face and one in the back. He smiled as he handed them the drinks but did not speak. Never mind him. They have no vocal cords. Only the people in red and green can speak. The others are friendly but communicate through telepathy. Once you learn to, you allow their minds to join yours, it gets quite interesting. Mark said as he took a sip of his drink. Although it can be boring sometimes down here, they are quite nice. And did you notice that you have a television? Well, as bad as some of the programs are, it is our chance to see what is happening on Earth. We have been watching the stories of the worldwide pandemic and have found ourselves very concerned. The talk here has been very cautious, but we can tell that they are concerned also. Tom told them. That is why we want to go back up to the surface. They told us that we cannot because of the changes that they had to make to our bodies. The story that we were told is that those changes cannot be reversed. I have seen and experienced what they are capable of and am sure that they are not being truthful about that. Ned told the 2 men. Unfortunately for us, they are telling you the truth. Returning to the surface is not a possibility at this point. Our bodies have been adapted to live under the water and all of the attempts to bring people back to the surface has failed. Everyone who has made the attempt has died. They are trying to fix the problem. You see, they know that technology has gotten so advanced on Earth that soon this location will no longer be a secret. Mark told them. Both Joe and Ned looked at each other. But we met a lady named Linda who removed some very heavy debris from my body with the wave of her hand. Why is she not able to reverse what she did to us? It makes no sense. Joe said. This world is riddled with tradition and lost secrets. There are many things that we don't understand. The lady Linda that helped you when you were injured is one of the oldest and most respected members of our community. She is the one who is working the hardest to come up with a solution. Tom told them. Linda was pleased to see that her 2 new arrivals were making friends so soon. Mark and Tom were good men who adjusted to life there and she hoped that they would help Joe and Ned. She wondered what these 2 men knew about what was going on with this great sickness that had seemed to have taken over almost the entire Earth. As she walked to the place where the honored ancestors stayed, she wondered if they could help her once again. The place that held the spirits of the people who had lived before was much like a chapel that you would find up on the surface of the Earth. People from all worlds had come to this place for centuries. There were over 1,000 different planets represented at the chapel, and Linda hoped that they could soon find a solution to the surface world problems. Each night she had watched the news with horror. Here in the city of El there was no violence, and she knew that soon that world would be discovered. The ships that went underwater had come close to their location more than once, and she was well aware of the talk about the strange goings-on in what they called the Bermuda Triangle. As Linda knelt down to speak to the ancestors, she felt a calm come over her, as she always did when she knelt quietly in front of the oracle of ancestors. As she felt the presence of the people from before, she began to get images. The images that she received were of people in anguish, people from all over the universe. These people had come to Earth in the hope of helping the inhabitants. The people of the Earth had come from a planet that was dying and had high hopes that they had found their little piece of heaven. However, things had not gone well, because through the years the people that were called gods by the people of the planet grew to like their power, and so it had been decided that observation was to be their way until it became essential that they appear once again. Apollo had become the most vocal of the gods and was very clear in his belief that no matter how good the intentions were, no man could ever be allowed to rule anyone. The power was too great and it would inevitably be abused. Humans were so weak and so violent. In all of thousands of years and hundreds of other planet inhabitants, he had never met such a violent race of people. However, now the people of Earth were in trouble, the type of trouble that could mean the end of life as they knew it, and he knew that something must be done. Linda listened to each of the ancestors and asked them to help her get the two men who had just been saved back to the top. She wanted to go with the men and bring them an offering of peace and salvation. No. The people of Earth are not ready, John called out. People, whole cities are dying, cried out Sam. Hercules said that the men of strength must be given the role to fix the problem. So much commotion, however, Apollo had the last say. We will consider giving these men the opportunity to carry the great offering of peace, but we must first observe and see what kind of men they are. Linda knew that this was a big step. For them to even consider allowing her to give the men a chance to survive on the Earth once again was something that she had been wishing for years to happen. They would have to watched very carefully and fully investigated. If they were worthy of the chance, perhaps the world of Earth had a chance. Chapter 3. Ned and Joe had so much to see. L was indeed a small city with many different types of people residing there. Everyone had a body that resembled those of their own planet, but man had strange colors: green, blue, red, orange, and some had 4 arms. Some were smaller and some were over 7 feet tall, but all nodded their heads and smiled as Ned and Joe walked by them. As they walked by a small chapel, they were pleased to see Linda leaving the building. She came right over to them and smilingly said, "How are you feeling?" Ned and Joe both smiled back, and Ned said, "We are getting used to our new surroundings. You know that it is a wonderful city and the people seem friendly enough, but I have a family and friends, as does Joe, and we want to get back to them. I am sorry, but at this point it is not possible for you to go to the surface. The lack of pressure will kill you. We have made attempts to do so in the past and unfortunately have not been successful at it. Here you can watch what is going on at your hometown and you can learn to live a new life. That is what I am here for," she told the two men quite honestly. Ned thought for a moment and decided to just walk with this woman quietly. They were shown around the city. There were so many people there and so many were from the planet. He knew that all of them had been at one time lost in what was known to him and others as the Bermuda Triangle. He wanted to hear their stories and made a mental note of that. Joe walked along with his friends and watched as children played in a large playground. They seemed to be a mixture of different beings. Some were from Earth while others were not. They seemed to be all happy and getting along quite well. It was then that he saw the teacher. She was a good-looking human about his age, and as she smiled he felt his heart melt. This had never happened to him before. He and his wife had been apart for years now, and he had taken to just devoting his life to his career. Joe smiled back and they kept walking. Ned and Linda had not missed the looks that the teacher and Joe had given each other. The first glimpse of the type of person Joe is. I hope the gods approve. Apollo had been watching them and approved what he had just seen. He had not added a little love potion. No, that would be Cupid's job. The library at the end of the road was so large and Ned immediately felt drawn to that. Is the library open to everyone? Ned asked Linda. Oh yes. Everything is open to any resident. Of course we ask that you knock at a resident door before walking in, but all doors are open and people are welcome. We have the history of your Earth and many other planets along with many of the lost writings from your Earth all there. They are mostly translated to English also for your pleasure. The other thing that was strange about their new home was how the top of the dome was blue just as in the sky. Down here at such a level there was not much life, so that made the ocean water a very blue. There was no sun, but there seemed to always be light. Joe was walking and watching things when he asked, why does it appear so bright like there is a sun? Linda smiled and said, down here at the bottom of the ocean there are many rocks that seem to give off almost an electric light effect. We find that most people have a harder time adjusting to the fact that it is always light out. We do not have a night time here in L. The lights are always on. Ned smiled as he remembered the very dark window curtains here in their room. I noticed some very dark curtains on the window in our room. Now I understand why. That will get a little getting used to, he said with a slight laugh. There was so much to see and learn about this place. Here he was sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean talking to an alien life form and enjoying himself. Ned thought to himself. He was going to go to the library every chance he got. Perhaps there would be an answer to how to return back home there in one of the books. It was then that he realized that he was hungry. I'm sorry, but where do we eat? I am very hungry. Linda found herself liking the man that called himself Ned. He was straightforward and seemed honest. Well, we are coming up on your home right now. When you walk in the building straight ahead is the Great Hall. There you can find dinner. It is open 24 hours a day. We have many meals to choose from, some traditionally Earth and some from other planets. I would encourage you to try something different once in a while, she told them with a smile. I will see you tomorrow, and with that she left them. Joe had found himself getting hungry. But, now he realized a couple of more things. One was that his watch no longer ran. He was at first sure that it was due to the accident, but now he wasn't so sure. He looked around and thought about it for a moment. Hey Ned, have you seen any clocks since we've been here? He asked. What a strange question, Ned thought. And then he thought about it for a moment. Here they were in a place where there was no night or day, and no, he had not seen a clock anywhere. He looked down at his own watch, knowing that it didn't work either. You know, Joe, you are right. There is no night, no day, and no time. This will get some getting used to. I am not even sure how long we have been down here. I think that I would like to watch some television after we eat. Joe told him. The restaurant was quite clean and did have some dishes that neither one of them had heard of. However, when the waiter came to the table, he was in green and spoke to them with a smile. We have what is known as a juniper soup. It has some vegetables that once grew only on that planet, but we have them here now. It is quite sweet and popular here. Both Ned and Joe decided to try it. Words cannot express the surprise when the men were given the soup. The vegetables were squirming and seemed to alive. Now, new and different was all right, but this was not there of a regular dinner. Excuse me, Ned said. I am afraid that I thought vegetables were a plant food. I am sorry, but I would like something else. Both Joe and the waiter seemed a little surprised by the reaction of Ned. Joe hadn't seen anything strange in his soup, and from the mutterings of the waiter he was sure that he hadn't seen anything either. Joe turned to Ned and asked him, what were you talking about? I didn't see the soup jumping around or moving, and it was actually good, Joe told him. Are you sure? I saw and heard the vegetable speak like I was getting ready to eat a live being. It was terrible, Ned told him. I guess that is something we will have to learn to get used to. How strange that I was the only one to have that experience. I will ask Linda about it. Apollo had been watching Ned as he had taken his soup. For the juniper soup to talk to him was a good sign indeed. After a supper of chicken and rice, the two men headed to their room. It was time to get some kind of idea what day and time it was. They wanted to see if their missing plane had been reported and if there was any other news worth listening to. Ned picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The television had been set to Florida so that they could watch not only in English but watch what was going on in the United States. They both took a seat on the couch and started to listen. The first thing that caught their attention was that the date was now June 21st. They had taken off on their ill-fated flight on June 14th. How could it have been a week already? Ned looked at Joe, that had an expression of surprise on his face as well. So they had been there for a week. They watched as the news reporter talked about the missing plane and looked on as they showed a picture of the two of them. Ned felt a real feeling of sadness when he saw his ex-wife and son talking to the reporters. There had been no sign of them or their craft, and they were going to be halting any further searches soon. Joe watched as his sister and mother cried on camera. It hurt him that his family didn't know that he was safe and sound. He wished that he could at least call them and tell them that he was all right. But he knew it wasn't possible. But the pandemic was getting worse. Almost the whole United States was shut down. The only businesses that were left open were essential, and everyone was wearing masks. Unfortunately, there were so many deaths and people weren't even allowed to see their dying loved ones. Both men felt such deep sadness for the friends and family and other humans who were suffering so badly. As they watched the news together, they became more and more depressed. They were surprised by a sudden knock on the door. It was the lady that they had seen with the children. She asked to come in. "My name is Sarah Walker. I have been here for almost 10 years and remember the first few weeks well. It is a strange but wonderful place, and soon you won't even want to turn on your television. There is so much strife and unhappiness there," she told them with a sigh. "Joe, I was wondering if you would like to take a walk with me," she asked. Joe smiled, as did Ned. "Yes, I would be happy to." With that, the two of them were off, and for the first time Ned found himself alone. Same chemistry as the people of Eron, their lungs would have to adapt. Eron was close to Earth, but was in trouble. They had mismanaged their own land and air and had destroyed nearly all life on their own planet. The life expectancy of a person had dropped by nearly 10 years and was getting worse. The scientists had decided to make a desperate attempt at saving their planet. With all the precautions that they could muster, they had set off a bomb to try to bring up the temperature of their planet and therefore bring back plant life. But the plan had backfired. The radiation from the bomb had killed millions of their inhabitants and destroyed much of their land. They now needed to travel to another planet. The Earth was their only possibility. It was very wild and unchanged, arid and very hot. It would take no less than 10 generations for the people to live any place but in the coldest, but they had destroyed their planet and they had no choice. Because of the distance and the dangers, only the young and the healthiest were going to be given this chance. It was thought that the best thing to do was to separate them. Each could be placed on a continent. However, it would be generations before the planet of Eron would completely die, and they wanted to keep some of their communications open. It was decided that with special equipment and short stays they could survive at 5 points on the planet. With the full-day sun and the full-day moon as their guidance, the people would never forget where they came from. With that, Ned had just read The Secret of the Planet. So we had originally been from another planet, and yes, those strange structures that had been found on all 7 continents had had a purpose. But, unfortunately, time had lost the meaning, and now the Earth was facing much of the same failure. Where was this planet? Where did we come from? Is it still uninhabitable? Then he saw the picture of Eron. It was no longer called by Eron, it was what we knew as Mars. Now Ned knew that he was not dreaming. It made sense. That is why we do not have natural enemies on this planet. That is why we have allergies even after millions of years. That is why there are unexplained things found all of the time. We do not belong here. Any more than the beings that he thinks of as aliens here in the city of El. Unfortunately, the story ended there in this book. Ned knew that he was going to have to investigate it more. Apollo, who had been watching Ned carefully, now knew that he was the man that was going to either save the world or destroy it. He had made the decision that Ned would be the man to come to Earth. Linda and him were going to do their best to stop the pandemic, the violence and the hate. Ned was coming out of the library when he saw Linda. She had a look of excitement on her face. "Ned, I have great news for you. Our ancestors would like to meet with you in the Hall of Ancestors," she told him. As Ned approached the small chapel, he wondered what the ancestors had to say to him. He had just found out that he was a Martian. Ha, what a joke! He always thought people were weird, but now he had confirmed it. The chapel was small and had a large oracle with marble all around it. It was very ornate and Ned couldn't help but stare with pleasure as they walked in. The place was a private place and there was no one else in there when the two arrived. Linda knelt down and indicated to him that he needed to kneel too. When he did, a door opened and a flash appeared before them. The flash of light didn't move, but it did start to pulse. As it pulsed, words came through. Ned wasn't sure if he was hearing the words with his ears or his mind. It was as though the sound was everywhere and nowhere. "I am Apollo, a god known to the Greeks many centuries ago. I am the most powerful of all the gods and have decided to make you my first human to return to the surface of Earth and try to fix a world where sense makes no sense, lies are the truth and death is a fact of life. It is our wish that you go to your American president and give him this." Before his very eyes appeared a rod. "Take this, Ned, and tell the man that when he can figure out how it works, peace will come to all on Earth. It will not work until you find someone who is honest and devoted to helping mankind. Do you understand?" he asked. Ned swallowed hard and said, "Yes, I will do this for my people, my planet, my own." With that, the flash disappeared and he was left with Linda. "Now what do we do?" Ned asked her. "I am afraid time is short. The disease of hate, lust and a man-made virus is taking a huge toll on the people of Earth. We are salvaging your plane at the moment and you must be returned to how you were. I will be returning with you as our ambassador." Ned looked at Linda and said, "The plane is very small. There is no room for 3 people. Joe will be staying here for a while. Even with the gods on our side, the trip is dangerous. We do not know how the people of Earth will react to the information that we must make public to save them and their planet," she told him. Ned wondered how he was going to tell Joe that he would be leaving with Linda. He had just walked into their room when Joe came in. "I was right behind you, bud." "Where did you go?" he asked. "I went to the library and read up on a little history. The books are very old and hold a lot of information about our planet and our beginning. We have not been told the whole truth, you know." Ned told him. "Well, just what did you find out?" "Are we from Mars or something?" he said in a jokingly manner. Ned cleared his throat and said, "I am afraid that is what I found out. It seems that there was a great disaster on the planet that they called Eron. The scientists took a chance and set off some kind of bomb, however, it backfired and the planet became unlivable. They sent their young and healthy to Earth. This happened a very long time ago. You can read the whole story at the library." Joe felt like saying, "You are joking," but from the look on Ned's face he could see that his colonel was not joking, he was being very serious. "Do you think that there are others on the surface of the planet that know this?" "I don't know, I spent only a few hours in the library. But, I have something else to tell you," Ned said carefully. Joe looked him straight in the eye and waited for his friend and colonel to tell him what else had happened in the short time that he was out on a walk. "Go ahead," he said. Ned knew that Joe had to know the truth and deserved to know the truth, so he looked him in the eye and said, "I was brought to the chapel by Linda. There I spoke to the god that was called Apollo. He said that it was time for this rod to be brought to the people of Earth and that he had chosen me to be the one to deliver it. This is good news. You and I will be leaving soon then." "Right," Joie said. He knew something wasn't quite right by the look on his commander's face. "I am sorry, but they wish to send Linda and me for this trip," he told him. This was it. He was going to be left down in a dome with all these strange creatures while his friend and commander was going to go to the surface and save the world. "Ned, I can be of great help too. Don't leave me down here," he asked, almost begging. "I have no choice. If we are successful we will be back, I promise. You can probably watch it on the television," he told his friend. There was nothing else to say. Joe knew that Ned would not change his mind. "When are you going?" he asked. "I don't know. Our plane needs to be repaired and I must learn more about life here. Linda will be helping. I expect to leave in a few days. They said that things are getting desperate on Earth and it is time for them to expose themselves to the world." Ned took a long sleep, as without a clock he wasn't sure how long, but he knew that when he awoke he felt refreshed. Joe had already left for where he didn't know, so he got into one of the robes and went to get something to eat. When he got in, the same man waited on him and he just ordered some eggs and toast. They didn't have bacon and he was afraid of the alternatives. As he left to go outside he was met by Linda. "The plane is ready. It is time to leave." Ned climbed into the cabin of his perfectly running fighter jet and watched the dome open up once again. He and Linda were off to their next adventure.